It was with this great sadness that we were informed that a former councillor and mayor of the borough, George Davidson, died on Saturday the 17th of August. He was made first citizen of the borough in the civic role in the year 2016 to 17. Councillor Davidson was first elected in 1995 and represented Bingham constituencies for a remarkable 24 years, until May this year, as well as performing parish and town council roles. As the mayor, he raised thousands of pounds for his chosen charity, Maggie's, which offers professional support to those with cancer and their loved ones. He was much loved and much respected. I wonder if you would join with me in a moment's silence in memory of this remarkable man. Thank you. Please be seated. I would like to introduce my chaplain to my left, the Reverend Michael Lees. He is a Methodist minister, and I would invite him to open the meeting with a prayer.
Heavenly Father, as we meet this evening, we are mindful of some of the contentious issues that appear to dominate our country at this time. And we pray for peace and justice will come, and that all our leaders and those in authority will do what is right and not just for expediency. And so as we come now to consider the life of our borough, its residents, its various activities, we give you thanks for all the benefits and enjoyments that we share in our life here. And so we offer this time now. We thank you for the opportunity to serve our community, and that you will give us all the wisdom and the courage for the respective tasks to which we feel called, seeking the welfare of those we serve. Amen.
Amen. Apologies for absence, please.
Apologies from Councillor Bailey, Councillor Phillips, Councillor Way, Councillor Jones, Councillor Mason and Councillor Jonathan Wheeler.
Item 2, do we have declarations of interest? No. Item 3, to approve as a correct record of the minutes of the meeting of the council which was held on the 11th of July.
I'd like to move those minutes, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to second the minutes, Madam Mayor.
Right, thank you, and Councillor Everdeen. Would you show if you approve? All in favour, please raise your hands. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry? So that is carried.
So just initial each page.
Here. There we are. That's
Just have to initial each page. Just this quick.
There you go. Right. What has the Mayor been doing? Well, since I last saw you, I've attended 22 events. And what an absolutely marvellous time I've had. It's quite incredible when you're the Mayor because people actually do want to see you. And that's not always the case, is it? You sometimes go places where they don't. And I have had an absolutely wonderful time. I won't go through them all because you actually know where I have been and what I've been doing, and some of you have attended some of the events. All I want to say is that I'm extremely proud of the people who devote their lives for the benefit of the people where they live and the people in the borough. We have some wonderful people out there. People who look after their allotments, people who look after their gardens, people who go out and talk to other people, people who give up their time in all sorts of ways. And could I remind you that the last time we met in this chamber, I asked you if you would do something for me. There are so many lonely people out there, and I asked you if before we met this evening you would speak to someone you'd never seen before, that you would smile at someone, that you would make a comment about the weather. I won't ask you if you have done this because I know so many of you can. And I asked one person, after he told me that he'd sat down and talked to someone sitting on a seat, how was it? And he said, it was magic. And it is. You will feel better, and I hope the person you speak to feels better. So let us go out there and show the people in Rushcliffe that we're really proud of them all. It doesn't matter who they are, but just show that we're so grateful and we're really happy to be here. Thank you very much. Right. Now, where have we got to? Right. Now, item 5, leaders' announcements. Would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sure members would like to join me this evening passing their condolences to the family of John Scott Lee. John Scott Lee was the Managing Director of Streetwise, one of our training companies. Many members worked with John and had a lot to do with him, both on their wards and also when we created Streetwise. He was absolutely fundamental into the success of Streetwise when we launched that time ago. And it was a real shock when we heard last week that John had passed away. And he will be greatly missed. His legacy certainly here is going to be Streetwise, and we hope for the success of that business going forward. But I'm sure all members will join me in saying in our condolences and sadness that John unfortunately died last week. I'd just like to also talk to members to inform them about some work we've been doing in terms of the traveller challenges that we've had. And I don't use the word pleased because I'm not pleased because it costs us a lot of money, a lot of time. But this week we were successful in getting an injunction in court in that we have now protected 5 of our sites, which is the Arena, Gresham, West Park, the Hook and the Rushcliffe Country Park, where a county judge has given now an injunction against any illegal encampments on that land. I do stress what this gives us options, because going onto that land now will actually be effectively illegal. There's powers of arrest, and it's actually contempt of court. And that gives a lot more powers to remove those people from there. We've had to do this, mainly I think it's because of the harm this has caused to our communities, the inconvenience of law-abiding citizens, and it is absolutely not acceptable, particularly when we saw it close by at the Arena here as well. It's also cost us over £26,000 in the last 5 years on clean-up. That's taxpayers' money that could have been used for frontline services. So I said, I'm not pleased we've done this, but I feel it's necessary. We'll also be going to court next week to look at extending this injunction, and hopefully that we will get that extended. We'll be making some announcements going forward. But I hope that members agree that this is a necessary step that we have to take to protect the rights of our residents, as well as obviously acknowledging the rights of travellers, and we will continue to do that through our welfare teams and also our support teams that are out there. Lastly, Madam Mayor, I'd like to just mention the Community and Sports Awards. I know that members have had emails asking for nominations. For new members, this is probably the highlight of the year because this actually brings and spotlight on all the key people in communities. And I'm glad the Madam Mayor has been talking about these people with allotments and what they do in communities. This is our way of recognising it. It's an absolutely wonderful night. So I would ask everybody in the chamber with all your awards, please, to get communities, get individuals to nominate and bring forward. By the 7th of October, I think it is, that you need your nominations in. The evening is on the 20th of November, where we make a really, really big thing about it. And I have to say, for me, it is the most special night of the year because you see genuine people, and sometimes you're very challenged not to shed a tear because there's some incredible life stories there. And it makes you reflect just the diversity of Rushcliffe, not just on age, but on abilities, whether it be schools, sportsmen, community leaders, everything else like that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, councillors. You'll have noticed in your packs that came out last week that there was no item on Local Plan Part 2, which was on the forward plan and you would have been expecting. The reason for this is that we had not yet received the final report from the inspector. We do expect that imminently. We're confident it'll be with us in the next couple of weeks. So we'll be looking to have an extraordinary council meeting. So it'll be a single agenda council meeting so that council can discuss the local plan part 2. The date we have in mind is Tuesday the 29th of October, and that will be sent round to all of you. Once the inspector's final report is received, we will have a meeting of the Local Development Framework Group so that they can have a look at the inspector's report before it goes to full council. I'm very pleased to let you know that the council has been awarded a government grant of just over £20,000 towards planning enforcement work within the Greenbelt area. So Dave Mitchell's team applied for the grant, and we'll be able to share more information with you in your weekly newsletter as to what that money is going to be used for. And finally, I'm also very pleased to let you know that the council has been awarded the Employer Recognition Gold Award for its work with the Armed Forces Covenant. We are the first council in Nottinghamshire to achieve this, and along with Charnwood, we're the first 2 district councils in the East Midlands to achieve this. So that's really, really good news. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
That's how it is. As we have no questions under citizens' questions, item 7, we'll move on to item 8. This is a corporate strategy 2019 to 2023. Councillor Robinson.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for new members' benefit, this is required by law that we actually publish a strategy which really sets out the blueprint of what the council is all about. And I do stress, and I will be saying this continually, this is a living document. This is not something that we put together, put in a drawer, and then we'll look again in 4 years' time. So it is very, very important that we get this document right. This has been through the scrutiny committees, and it has also been obviously through Cabinet in putting it together. Now, the current plan we have expires in March 2020. So you might ask why we're actually putting this today. The reason is because we've been very successful with the previous plan. And if you look at that, a lot of the deliverables have been completed. We've successfully kept to the timescales. So it was felt prudent a few months ago that we actually review that now, and we start now to update the plan after the elections in May. So that's why we're bringing this to Council today, to seek your approval as we go through. I don't seek to go through the plan page by page. Suffice to say that it starts with a journey. It's interesting, you look at the pathways there and you look at the key milestones, that sometimes you forget just how much has been done over these last few years. And it then talks about then the sort of key deliverables, and you look at some of the numbers, and one I've got in there that we empty 3.3 million bins in a year. Now, when your bin doesn't get emptied and you make a big fuss about it, quite rightly so, you sometimes forget that there's 3.2 whatever million, can't even do the maths of it, are actually being emptied all over that authority in that year. Also very important within the strategy is the financial position. You'll see the page there which gives a good summary of the finances, of where we stand and our income levels, and of course where our expenses are. As I said, this is a living document, and it's divided into 4 categories, and these are really important that we're very clear what these are. The first is quality of life, and I make no apology, as the document states, that this is the absolute first priority of this authority, is quality of life, because that really encompasses everything that we do. It then goes on to talk about the efficient services, because ultimately that is one of our prime roles, is to deliver it. And whether it's emptying the bin on time, to do with our benefit system, to do with our housing, these are the key services that we must never, ever, ever distract from in terms of the delivery. We then talk about sustainable growth, and this reflects the challenge right across the country in delivering this growth, both in employment and in housing, and there are many facets to that sustainable growth. And of course, one which this authority is very proud of in terms of what it's achieved and what it means to this council is the environment. This is absolutely fundamental, and this really underpins so much of what we do in this ever-changing world. I just ask members just to go on there. Within all those 4 groups now, it talks about the key actions and in terms of, and also the timescales as we go through there. And as I said, this is a live document, and we'll constantly be referring to this. When we met with the Cabinet and through the scrutiny as well, we looked at to make sure that those timescales are feasible, they are deliverable, they've been challenged, they've been changed, to make sure that we do have a document that we can present here tonight. So, members, I feel that this is very sound. I think it's a very pragmatic plan. I think it's at the heart of everything we do, and I commend this plan tonight, and I move the motion on page 15, section 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to second the recommendation and reserve the right to speak.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Bean to give our response.
I do. Thank you. Councillor Howard? Oh, sorry.
I'd just like to mention that the chief exec that's retired, there was no mention of him, and also the new councillors that have been appointed for Labour, the vision and the drive that they're bringing, there was no mention of them either. And I thought it's a really good strategy, but there's key points that need to be mentioned.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gray? Oh. Yeah, I've written them down. Councillor Gray and Howard. Yeah. Oh, he doesn't want to speak. Councillor Howitt.
Do you want to? No, I don't think she wants to. So, Councillor
Howitt next.
Yes, we don't have anything to add, but thank you.
Councillor Mallender.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you very much to the officers for a very full report on this. I welcome this. It's good to see ambition for this borough, and it's clear from what's in here that we have much to do. But we must, as we find in politics nationally as well as locally, make sure that we take the public with us on this journey. We need to explain, consult and review, and make sure that we have people with us, whether it be on the left, the right, whatever their political views. I'm pleased to see in here that we've got mention of the growth boards and the review of community facilities, a very pressing topic in West Bridgford, certainly at the moment with the controversy around Lutterell Hall. There's a lot of mention in here of green initiatives too, which I'm very pleased to see. The Rushcliffe Refills campaign. We'd like to see public water fountains as well. It's not just enough to refill bits of plastic bottles a few times. Water fountains are a thing that are clearly seen everywhere in the USA, widely in Europe, and increasingly in the UK as well. It's something we'd still like to see. Tree planting scheme is mentioned there as well. Fantastic idea. We're pleased to see mention of the roadmap to the carbon neutral status. That's great. We need to help this become the norm, to implement it and lead the way as a borough, not just for ourselves, but our suppliers, local businesses, and to the benefit of our residents. In conclusion, I would say, looking through this in general, expenditure is easy, income is more of a challenge. As a council, we need the right tools to build our future, and where we lack them, we must not shirk from getting onto central government and making sure they give us the tools to do the job. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Now, Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank the officers and members involved for all the work that's gone into updating the corporate strategy. There's much in it that the independent councillors agree with. However, we will not be voting for it for the following reasons. There are not enough measures or specific targets for climate change. Rushcliffe is one of the most affluent areas of the country. We should be able to lead the way, not follow others. There's an ongoing failure to maintain a 5-year housing land supply. Even if this is attained with the local plan part 2, it may well not persist past the first monitoring point. The impact from predatory developers is unacceptable in our ward and elsewhere. There's a failure to address the housing needs of older people and to provide enough cheaper market homes. Despite the fact that Eastleigh is taking a hefty share of the housing, annual capital expenditure and funds such as the new homes bonus are being used elsewhere in Rushcliffe, with very little investment in infrastructure and jobs for Eastleigh. Although the Eastleigh Growth Board is welcomed, it's not coming forward with projects for developing the village centre or providing business initiatives. The village is being told that it has to do this itself, whereas Rushcliffe is running projects for Cotgrave and Bingham, for example. There's not enough stress on ensuring that the various developer contributions are put to use quickly for the benefit of the relevant communities to address the impacts of development. There is investment in property outside the borough, whilst assets within the borough are sold off, with the emphasis on being entrepreneurial rather than community-centred. There's a focus on improving the A52, A46 and A453 corridors, whilst ignoring the pressing needs to improve the A60, A6006 and surrounding country roads and junctions to cope with additional traffic from housing and other growth in the area of Leek Ward. Serious road safety concerns are being expressed by residents. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Right, Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think just a couple of points, and I'm not going to dwell on this. First of all, in terms of individual, this is not about an individual plan. This is about the council, the authority as a whole. So we're not picking out individuals, whether it be councillors, officers or everything. This is about the authority working together, officers and members. I love the word Councillor Maloney used, ambition, and I think that's a wonderful word which expresses and sums up this plan, and it's one thing which drives this authority and which differentiates it from many, many other in the country. In terms of Councillor Thomas's comments, I think all of us could talk about our wards for the next 3 days, about what we need. This is not about ward specific, to do with your houses, to do with your roads and things. That is business as normal. It goes through our scrutiny groups, it goes through the cabinet, portfolio holders. This is about the key top objectives for this authority. So please don't confuse this as ward centric. It is not. It doesn't mention specifically the wards and the issues there. So things like infrastructure, yes, we've all got problems with the roads, and we all use the relevant people with the highways, with the county council, etc. But can I stress, this is a corporate strategy document that we use. There's a lot of work streams come out of it, so please keep that in the right context. Thank you.
Do I go back to every No. No, right. All of you who are in favour, will you please show in the usual way? Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you all very much. Now we go, that is carried. Thank you very much. Item 9, Community Infrastructure Levy. I call upon Councillor Upton to move this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Community Infrastructure Levy, or SIL for short. I just want to bring out a few key issues on quite a lot of documents here. It's primarily a discretionary charge that councils can have if they want it, in addition to Section 106 planning obligations and any other legal agreements, to help fund the provision of infrastructure to support new developments in their area. Essentially, it's to help mitigate the impacts of new developments on existing communities. This council agreed to proceed with the SIL, and there have been 2 formal consultations and a public examination by an independent examiner, whose report stated that the proposed charging rates are appropriate and will not undermine development viability. The SIL is a charge levied on all new developments of buildings and extensions with 100 square metres or more of floor area where there's not a statutory exemption. And the proposed charging rates are shown in this report, Appendix A. In Rushcliffe, there are 5 geographical residential charging zones and a borough-wide non-residential charging zone. So for clarity, with certain limited exceptions, the SIL is chargeable on a single new house or extension if the floor area exceeds 100 square metres, and this is quite new for us. These proposed charges need to be realistic and fair, and the examiner concluded that the proposed charging schedule is appropriate for the collection of the SIL in Rushcliffe, and that the rates should not put developments at risk. Generally, a financial charge will be the norm, but you'll see in the report there are regulations that a payment in kind policy, such as land or buildings, is also available. Where appropriate, it's intended that the SIL and the Section 106 planning agreement will operate together, with generally the Section 106 agreements focused on the individual site development and the SIL used to fund specific new infrastructure to support a number of developments in the area. Section 106 agreements, I would add, will still be used to secure affordable housing. A proportion of the SIL money raised has to be spent within the relevant community, and this is where it's called the Community Infrastructure Levy, where the chargeable development takes place, and rightly so. And detailed guidance in Appendix A, item 419, if you like, will be produced for how this will be done for parished and non-parished areas. Presently, there is a legal requirement to publish a list of the infrastructure types that would be funded by SIL. It's called the 123 regulation list. I don't know why, but there we are. And these are shown in Appendix A of the report. The regulations require that 15% of the income is passed on to the local communities where the development takes place. And this can rise to 25% if there's an adopted neighbourhood plan. Importantly, this element of SIL can be spent on a wider range of infrastructure projects in that local area. The SIL liability will be confirmed when a planning permission is actually issued, and any sites that already have planning permission, whether outline or in full, will not be liable to pay SIL. It's not retrospective. Therefore, I would say there's some urgency in getting this adopted this evening and implementing it as soon as reasonably practical. So to conclude, quite a lot of detail in this report, but I would move the recommendation set out on item 2 of the report, namely, to recommend that the Council A, adopts the Community Infrastructure Levy draft charging schedule as set out in Annex 3 and 4 of the examiner's report, with it being brought into force on Monday, the 7th of October this year, 2019. And B, it adopts the Community Infrastructure Levy instalment policy and the Community Infrastructure Payment in Kind policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Upton. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm very happy to second this recommendation as shown in the report, and I'll reserve my right to speak for now. Thank you.
I thank you. Councillor Gray.
Councillor Gaunt will give our response on this.
Right, thank you, Madam Mayor. Basically, as a group, we're broadly in favour with these changes. The SIL is quite a vital way of getting essential infrastructure and services into our communities. particularly in the time of austerity, which is so desperately needed. So we do have a few slight concerns that, with it being a living document, might be worth considering. And when we were talking about it, one of the things that came up was a bit concerned that larger extensions may be deliberately built at around 98 square metres so that then they avoid paying any sill, and then 6 months later put in an application to have the loft done. And so you might want to think about, you know, what kind of things we could do to stop that happening, that sort of thing. But apart from that, we're pretty much in favour, so thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howard?
Councillor Major will give our report.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So the Liberal Democrat Group welcome this innovation. I sit on the Local Development Framework Group, and I was walked through the whole process, and it seems to me it's been a robust examination, and the impact of this will be only on the positive as far as we can make out. I think it allows clarity for developers, and so they can understand the liabilities at the right point in the application process, and I believe it will help us to kind of capture the gap between those larger developments where the Section 106 come in and actually help us to kind of capitalise on some of the smaller developments who so far have kind of slipped under the radar, and use those funds in the right positive way for our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mallender?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It feels like this one's been a really long time coming, doesn't it? We've been talking about this for years now. Years. Yeah. You and I were alive. It's interesting to see some of the things that's in the report, and we do welcome this within the Green Group, particularly the work going for the strategic infrastructure. There's a lot mentioned in there. From the Green point of view, we would love to see this extended to include more environmental infrastructure, such as nature reserves, preserved woodlands, community microgeneration, things that sort of give us the appreciation of nature, preserving the environment, helping to grow the green spaces in Rushcliffe. You know, it's great that we're doing the tree scheme, as we mentioned earlier, but just think of the scale of the things that we could do for nature, for our people, for this borough. We're using some of this infrastructure levy to improve and enhance nature throughout the area. I think that's something that we should look at. I hope it's something that can be included in the future. Just turning briefly to the local infrastructure part, I'm pleased to see that parish councils would benefit from this. There's in 4.16 the bit where it says in unparished areas the borough council retains 50% of the income which is spent on local infrastructure in consultation with the local community, and I look forward to hearing in more detail how that consultation will work. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Independent Group also welcomes the introduction of SIL at long last. Going forward, we think it's important to be proactive about spending the funds for the benefit of the community, rather than regarding them as a resource for supporting our cash flow or otherwise just generally going into the coffers. And I think that will take effort to make that happen. Infrastructure work doesn't just happen on its own. People, it needs to be planned and worked for. I do have particular concerns about the local element of the infrastructure levy for the non-parished areas. I think it's particularly important for those areas that planning on how that money is spent is taking place in full consultation with the communities involved, to ensure that the funds are used in a timely way for the benefit of the communities. Thank you.
Councillor Clark?
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just draw your attention very quickly on page 42, paragraph 5.2, where it says there's an option not to adopt SIL, and that's always an option. But I'll just emphasise what Councillor Upton said. This is actually urgent that we do adopt SIL for the reasons that have been stated. A lot of people have made comments about, it's about time, and it is about time that we do get on with it straight away, because the amount of growth and development that is taking place is creating a big challenge for us all in all our communities, and it is for the good of the communities. It's not to be used as a general fund for the council. It is specifically to support growth and development, to ensure that the impacts, because it does say to mitigate against the impacts of new development on infrastructure. It's that infrastructure, those supporting facilities, that are so important that SIL will assist in providing our communities. We need to do it because developers are already underway, and unless it's done now, we will lose out as applications come through. So, fully support it.
Right, thank you. Councillor Butler.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. We're very pleased to hear the general support for SIL. And yes, colleagues are absolutely right. It has been a long time in the making. I remember we started talking about this when I was sitting up there some 4 or 5 years ago.
Yes.
But you can only see from the complication of the report that it is a complicated business we're in here. I have to say as well, it takes rather a lot of time to explain it all. It's just a complex bit of legislation, and it's been pointed out it's discretionary. We don't have to do it, but I think certainly the time is right now. So I'm very pleased to hear the support. Just one little comment that was raised about any possible loopholes, sort of 98 square metres as opposed to 100 square metres. That's a very interesting point, actually. But I think the main thing to remember about SIL is the biggest threat or attack and impact of development in the borough is not so much on your individual 98 square metre extensions to a house, but it's obviously the big housing developments that we're all very familiar with, and permission has been granted for some, and there will be more to come. So knowing that there will be more to come, I think now is absolutely right time to have the SIL so that we can have it in place. And also, it's not a replacement for 106. We're always talking about S406. It's a little bit of a mantra, but 106 is still there, and SIL is a very, very vital and helpful addition to that. So very pleased that we are at last in a position to have a SIL in place. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Anyone else would like to make a point? Yeah. Councillor Upton.
Thank you. Just to pick up on a couple of points, if I may, without over-labouring it, the 100 square metres of the floor area is part of the national SIL regulation, so I understand the points you make, but not within our control, unfortunately, at the moment. The points that Councillor Malander made, yes, I understand that, all about trees, environment, and I picked up on cycle routes and efficiencies and things like that. We will review these regulations probably in 12 months or 2 years' time, and I think that's a good opportunity for us to consider these, because I guess you're focusing on table 2 where it lists the strategic infrastructure to be funded there, and they're not necessarily cast in stone. They can be reviewed and looked at, so thank you for those comments. And finally, the guidance about spending the 15-25% to parishes, non-parish areas. I just draw members' attention to item 4.19, which I think there does say that further guidance will be produced for these issues and the percentages and how that's going to operate in the relatively near future. So thank you for that. I move the recommendation.
All of those who are in favour, will you show in the usual way, please? Thank you very much. It has passed. Item 10, Gotham Neighbourhood Plan. Councillor Upton, may I call upon you again, please?
Right. Similar sort of issue here, but a slightly different tack. Gotham Neighbourhood Plan. Well, neighbourhood plans, as I know very well, having chaired the Radcliffe one for 4 years of my life, are designed to give local people real powers to shape the future of their community. And they do contain policies written by the community for the community. And to try and shape how they want their local area to change, if you like, over the planned period. And there are a lot of these that have been adopted throughout the country, and from my personal observation, they are beginning to deliver and give local people a local say, which is what the Localism Act 2011 was all about, in my opinion. However, neighbourhood planning, as I say, was introduced by the Localism Act and is recognised by the National Planning Policy Framework. And the aim of that legislation is to empower local communities to use the planning system to promote appropriate and sustainable development in their area. But having said that, these neighbourhood plans have to be in general conformity with our strategic policies as the local planning authority. If a neighbourhood plan is made part of our local development plan, then planning applications within its area should be determined in accordance with both the Rushcliffe local plan and the relevant neighbourhood plan, unless there's material considerations that indicate otherwise. To date, there are 3 approved neighbourhood plans in Rushcliffe: Eastleigh, which was the first, Radcliffe, which I was involved with, and Keyworth. And this report is asking Council to agree, subject to a positive referendum result, and I loathe to say that word, but anyway I did, that the Gotham Neighbourhood Plan should form part of the Council's local development plan. The Gotham Neighbourhood Plan has been promoted by the Gotham Parish Council for their designated area of the Gotham Parish. It's been publicised, consulted on, subjected to public hearings, examined by independent examiners and considered by the Borough Council, all as detailed in the appendices, and I don't propose to go through all that. But there is a matter of the decision statement I just want to point out, and I'd like to say that this includes all the proposed modifications suggested by the examiner, and the Council has agreed these should be made to meet the basic conditions. During the examination, there was extensive debate regarding the identification of areas of land as local green spaces, and the examiner has concluded that one of these should be removed and the other retained. Whilst the Council raised its concerns regarding the designation of both these areas of local green space and could, under the Town and Country Planning Act, decide to also remove the second area of the local green space, the examiner considers the retained local green space is compliant with national planning policy and guidance. Hopefully you're still with me on this. It's a little bit technical. Good. Consequently, its removal by the Council would be hard to justify. The removal would also necessitate further consultation and given the implications of its removal, the modification will require independent examination again. The outcome of all of this is a recommendation that the plan should now proceed to a referendum, no later than Monday, the 9th of December this year. The format of the referendum, I'm saying it a lot, aren't I, is set out in item 411 of the report. Essentially, if more than 50% of those voting yes, then the Borough Council is required to adopt the plan. If the result is no, then nothing further happens, and the Parish Council will have to decide what it wants to do. So, I therefore move the recommendation set out in item 2 of the report. Namely, it is recommended the Council approves the decision statement on the Gotham Neighbourhood Plan for publication. The Council approves the holding of a referendum for the Gotham Neighbourhood Plan, with the area of the referendum being the parish of Gotham, and C, subject to a majority vote for the referendum, the Council makes or adopts this neighbourhood plan, and authority is delegated to the Executive Manager Communities to issue a statement setting out this decision as soon as possible following the referendum. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Walker.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very pleased to second this motion and I will reserve my right to speak.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gray.
The Gotham Neighbourhood Plan represents a huge body of work and will no doubt be of great use to the people of Gotham. Parish Councillor Lewis Macaulay recommends this work, and we think it is right to take this to the people of Gotham.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Howard.
The Liberal Democrats welcome this plan. We think it's important that it reflects the needs of housing for the local community and that it gives the people of Gotham the right to say on what they think. Thank you.
Councillor Mallender.
I hadn't actually indicated, Madam Mayor, but since you named me, I thought. No, Green Group's perfectly happy with this and pleased for it to go to a referendum.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we would like to support the Gotham Neighbourhood Plan. We did have had some issues which we've taken through representations. but on the whole, we're thoroughly supportive. Thank you.
Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And yes, I invite all members to support the recommendations on this matter this evening so that Gotam's neighbourhood plan may proceed to referendum and hopefully successful adoption thereafter. This represents one step along a journey for the formulators of the plan that has so far been long, taxing, but I trust ultimately worthwhile. For those unfamiliar with the process, getting this far is not easy. We can all have an opinion on what is best for our community, and similarly a desire to influence planning matters in our area. Not everyone can, or is prepared to, commit to the hours of slog required to formulate a sound neighbourhood plan. In supporting the recommendations of this report, I would like to publicly thank the Gotam Neighbourhood Plan Advisory Committee for the dedication, skill and persistence they have displayed in producing the plan. As in any team situation, it is difficult to single out individuals. However, if I may, Madam Mayor, I'd like to record thanks on behalf of the village of Gotam to Councillor John Anderson, who has led the committee with aplomb. John recently retired as a parish councillor after 24 years distinguished service, during which time he had a hugely positive impact on the village, served as a role model to many, including myself, as to what a community representative should be, and leaves an enviable legacy, not least the Gotam Neighbourhood Plan before you this evening. In conclusion, I would simply draw your attention to the overview of the examiner's report that reads, "The preparation of a neighbourhood plan involves the parish council in expending considerable sums of money and much effort. This is undoubtedly true. In this instance, however, the parish council can take comfort from the fact that they and their professional advisor have produced a clear and focused document that will provide a valuable tool in managing developments in the area. So please join me in supporting the recommendations."
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Upton.
No, I've no further comments. I welcome what fellow councillors have said. It's very positive, I feel, and hopefully the referendum will take place and we'll have a positive outcome. Thank you. So,
Right. Well, thank you all for that. If you are in favour, will you show in the usual way, please? I think it's everyone. Unanimous. Thank you very much. That was passed. Thank you. Now, item 11, polling places review. Councillor Robinson, may I call upon you, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This is an administration paper, really, about the polling places. Could be used soon if it's an election, perhaps. We could all guess on when date that's going to be. But essentially, this was a review of the polling station June to September 2019. It's required by law. It's a public consultation. Responses, 14 responses that came back are in Appendix 1. I'll let you read those. They're all obviously very ward specific and quite detailed. Those requests, I think there's 7 in there that's requested some variation changes. They've been assessed by the returning officer, the chief executive, and the revised schedule is actually set out there on Appendix 2. So if I could just move the recommendation on page 175, section 2 to the council tonight, please. Thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you. Councillor
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to second the recommendation and I reserve the right to speak.
That's lovely. Thank you. Councillor
Councillor Gowland will give our response on this.
I'd like to thank the work that's been done to make sure the schools are kept open during the election days. That's been a good outcome. I'd also like to note the problems with the roads in Abbey Ward in that area, but I don't think it will affect the use of the polling station, so thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, briefly, there's a danger of this one being ultra-local compared to the strategic one, isn't there? Let's go around. We won't go around every board, don't we? So, yes, broadly speaking, support the results. Just a comment on Lady Baker's, why would I not? We think the changes are fine. Pleased to see that. We still have a note that we're now split into 3 polling districts. There are 2 polling places there. It was noted at the last elections that either of those 2 polling places are actually big enough for the whole of Lady Bay to vote in. So people are used to having one place to vote. We could revert to that at a future review. That's all. Thank you.
I don't have any comments on this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Item 12, notices of motion. The motion is to be put by Councillor Jen Walker.
If you read this bit next, do you want me to do this?
Sorry?
Do you want me to do this bit?
All right. As notified by the Chief Executive via email earlier today, following cross-party discussions, I understand that Councillor Walker would like to propose an altered motion for discussion this evening. Could I ask Councillor J. Walker to confirm?
I can confirm, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Right. Do you have a seconder?
Yes.
Right, thank you.
Ask her to read out her.
Sorry?
Ask her to read out her motion.
Right, would you now read out your motion, please?
Of course, thank you. A climate emergency has been, I'm trying to read through my laptop here, bear with me, my eyes aren't that great. But a climate emergency has been declared by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Action is required at all levels of government, and at Rushcliffe Borough Council we now...
Could you press the red button? I don't think people can hear you.
Can you just read out the motion?
Just the motion?
Yes.
Just the motion.
Sorry, okay. So this council agrees to 1, conduct an immediate audit of all its investments to ascertain the current level of fossil fuel equity investments. 2, conduct an immediate audit of the carbon footprint of its operational assets through its carbon reduction work programme. And 3, incorporate its environmental plans to the incorporate in its environmental plans the reduction of the use and future investment in fossil fuels wherever possible.
Right.
So now we're going to vote to vary the motion.
Right.
So no discussion.
Right.
Do you want to say?
Yes, please.
Okay, councillors, we're now going to ask you to vote to accept the altered motion. So no discussion at this point. You're voting to accept the altered motion. If that's accepted, we will then turn to the debate and Councillor Walker will present her motion. Okay? So all in favour?
Right, all of you in favour, please show in the usual way. So that's carried. Right. So would you like to now speak?
Thank you very much. I believe this motion requires no guidance from me. It's quite simple. It's simple economics, really. The share in fossil fuel investments will continue to decline as the market realises that to stay within the guidelines of the Paris Accord, fossil fuels will have to remain in the ground, changing their status to stranded assets. For me, as a new councillor with a family, the decision couldn't be simpler. Vote for it, and you've done something of value tonight, something that means you may be able to look young people in the eye and say you did what you could when it was asked of you. They won't be interested in our excuses. They won't care that we felt, well, the time wasn't right, that there were too many complications, or that you couldn't back it because it came from a different political colour. They'll want to hear that we did everything we could, we maybe made some mistakes, but kept trying because we had the ability and the power to make changes that were required. Since becoming a councillor, I've noted the disconnect between what we discuss in this kind of climate-controlled room and the effect the decisions have to the outside world. So I ask you, when you vote on this motion, that you hold an image in your head. My daughter has just started secondary school this month. She's 11. In 2082, it'll be her 75th birthday. I would like you all to cast your minds ahead to the world on that date. If you're like me, in your head it's not a pleasant one. Shrinking glaciers, bleached coral reefs, mass extinction, drought, unpredictable weather, we've all seen the news.
The discussions we make today in rooms like these could offer another vision. It could offer another vision for others to follow as well. Investments in fossil fuel companies are increasingly financially risky. International efforts to reduce carbon emissions to prevent catastrophic climate change means the majority of known fossil fuel reserves cannot be exploited and must be left in the ground. The market value of fossil fuel companies is based largely on the notion that all known reserves can be exploited. Understanding that they cannot be is growing quickly, and the point fast approaching where most reserves will be rendered valueless, becoming those stranded assets. At this point, there'll be a large reduction in the share prices of the fossil fuel companies. The fossil fuel industry could lose 28 trillion over the next 2 decades as a result of the tightening international climate change policies. I urge you to vote with your conscience and show that Rushcliffe Borough has the vision and can set the examples for others to follow. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Corn.
Sorry. Well, I'd like to second this motion. Got quite a lot to say actually, so I'll be trying to quickly. Investment in fossil fuels is becoming more and more financially risky. As Councillor Walker stated very effectively, it's clear most fossil fuels need to stay in the ground to avoid climate disaster. The market value of fossil fuel companies is largely based on the notion that all known reserves can be exploited. As climate action campaigns ramp up and political opinion catches up, share prices in these companies will reduce and any investments will be reduced in value. It's going to provide a risk to the Borough Council. Coal, oil and gas as traditional fossil fuels received £10.5 billion a year in support in the UK compared to 8.3 billion for renewables last year. The International Institute for Sustainable Development, the IISD, says a swing of just 10% from fossil fuels to renewables would pay for a transition to clean energy. When you combine the fact that annual investment in renewables has been greater than fossil fuels in electricity generation since 2008, with the fact that new renewable capacity has exceeded fossil fuel power each year since 2014, the future for fossil fuels looks grim. Politically, subsidies on fossil fuels will become less and less palatable with further worsening of climate change, and they'll fall away. And if Rushcliffe decides to lead local councils to pass motions like this one, our government will have to hasten the demise of fossil fuel usage. As this decline in fossil fuel use occurs, the investments that we hold in them will become more and more risky. As a geologist, I keep well informed of current research, and I was informed of a publication in the scientific journal Nature Communication that presented research carried out by the University of Nottingham, our local university, in partnership with the British Geological Survey. It highlighted major concerns about the quality of available shale gas in the Boland Shale Formation of northern England, the one that spans from Lancashire where they're currently doing the fracking work. It's considered from the new research that they've done to be, or it previously was considered to be the most abundant field in the UK for potential fracking. Previous estimates of shale gas were based on research that was carried out and the returns that were found from the American drilling of fracking operations. But new techniques used by the BGS and the University of Nottingham show that those reserves in the Boland shales may be as little as 10% of what was previously thought. This came out in August this year, so it's fairly new information. So this puts future investments in fracking under serious doubt. And, well, any current investments we've got in fracking would be very risky for the borough as well. Divestment away from fossil fuels is very likely to occur with time, as fossil fuel use decreases and renewables increases, but time is against us. Waiting for the market to drive investments will not be good enough. We've got to act now to mitigate the worst effects of climate change. This motion asks for an audit to ascertain fossil fuel investment levels in the borough, an audit of carbon footprint in the borough, and to incorporate in its environment plans to reduce the use of and future investments in fossil fuels. Well, with these investments in mind, I'd like to point out in conclusion that information that is regularly available in the Financial Times Stock Exchange report shows that investment portfolios which exclude fossil fuel companies perform at least as well as those that include them. The borough has plenty of scope to investigate opportunities for making local investments in sustainable projects, which will bring economic, social and environmental benefits to Nottinghamshire instead of continuing to invest in increasingly risky fossil fuels. I'll be voting for this motion and appeal to all of you to do the same so we can secure the health and well-being of our planet whilst removing the financial risk to the borough of investing in unsustainable fossil fuels. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and I think most every councillor in this chamber will appreciate very eloquently put in terms of the impact on our environment and certainly reflecting the economics as well. And I'd just like to recognise publicly Councillor Walker for reaching out and talking to me about this motion rather than springing it on us where we could have the conversation, because for us, in terms of the environment, it should not be politicised. I think it's really important. As you rightly say, that there is only one environment, there's one world, and we have to make substantial steps. I am going to touch a little bit on politics. I'm going to ask one thing of you, though, on this. The last deep coal mine in this country was approved earlier this year by the Labour Party in a council up north. And why you don't write to them and just ask exactly what you said, why that council approved that deep coal mine. Yeah, I think that was absolutely disgraceful. And the Labour Party did actually support that at a national basis as well. And I find that massive hypocrisy, I really do. But having said that, what you said is absolutely right, and taking this lead with this motion in terms of we go forward. I think it's really important as well to recognise that Rushcliffe, we use the word ambition, our ambition in terms of the environment, I think has been absolutely outstanding. We talk about the reduction of single-use plastics. We talk about the tree scheme that Councillor Mallender, over 2,000 applications now for trees. We have a nerd in our group who told me it's 4 acres of trees. He needs to get a life, I think. But that's incredible, and they will be going out over the next few months. And I think that is a wonderful, wonderful action and the impact that we can actually make at this stage. And one of the biggest, I think, impacts we can make is on house building. And we've talked about this in this chamber before, that we should be having much more environmentally friendly homes. And we are lobbying the government, developers, to tell them they have got to improve. I mean, putting boilers, the current boilers now, I mean, I'm sure Councillor Manley will know more than I do. It's incredible the negative impact it's having on the environment that's going to these new homes, the concrete, etc., that they're actually using. And there's all sorts of measures we could take, and I'm hopeful that Abbey Road will be an exemplary site that this council will drive, whether we do it ourselves, with a developer. I think it's an outstanding opportunity. And I say all this in the context because absolutely right in terms of the motion and the points that we have talked about with Councillor Walker. One very important, I did remind Councillor Walker that they have to be deliverable, these motions. They have to be tangible, and they have to be realistic and pragmatic. And I feel that those 3 items there meet that criteria. There is no point in us talking for hours about the environment and things we could do that we don't control, that are wishes that might happen outside of this borough. But those there, I think, are, as I say, are tangible. I think they're very important, and I think it was very well put by both our councillors there. Can I also just point out, also, should be mentioned, we have, unfortunately, within our borough, probably one of the biggest polluters in the country, in Ratcliffe Power Station. But I'm delighted where we're working with that now, it looks like that will be closing earlier than even we thought. And there are a huge amount of work going on now in the background. And that hopefully is going to be a leader in green technology and also converting waste to energy, batteries, etc. So I think that is real encouragement, and that's right on our doorstep. And as authority, we really support that. Because for me, when I go on the motorway, I think that's the biggest blight of everything, what that pollutes and what it does. So this group will be supporting this motion, and again, I thank you for bringing the motion tonight.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Mallender.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to fellow councillors for bringing this motion in the first place. Because we'd brought the climate emergency one before, I'm glad to see so many people here supporting this divestment as well. It's interesting to see around the world the amount of investment now that is going into renewable energies, battery technology in particular as well, to actually move us away from fossil fuel use and production. If you look at the work that's going on even in the Middle East, where so much oil comes from and where there's a lot of controversy at the moment with the alleged drone strike on Saudi Arabia, the amount of work that is happening in that area by some of those countries to move their future away from reliance on the fossil fuel industries themselves. They don't want to be behest to that because they know they'll be just left high and dry. And we have to make sure that we're not in the same position. I know Councillor Moore, I talked to you before about various apps and things, so I'm just having a look at one at the moment. So currently, the UK's energy demand is 36.6 gigawatts. You're going to check a different one, aren't you? But that's currently, of course, it's a fairly still evening, and the sun's gone down. So only 4.9 of the power is coming from renewable energy. This is where battery technology is really going to have to step in the future and keep us going with that. I was talking to a business only yesterday. They deal in reclaimed furniture. They're based in Nottingham. They're putting PV panels in there. They're going to put battery power in there as well, because they want to have as much of their power coming not just from renewables, but also off-grid, when they don't have to rely on long-distance energy transmission as well. Currently, 56% of the power in the UK is coming from fossil fuels. Most of that is gas, I look at this moment. Half a gigawatt is coming from coal. So Ratcliffe-on-Soar is kind of spinning its wheels a bit in some terms. But we have to go a long way on this. We have an awful lot that still needs to be done. We're pumping out vast amounts of carbon dioxide still into the atmosphere. Mention was made about the tree planting scheme. We all think that's fantastic. I've got a friend over at the City Council who is also a bit of a nerd on things. We've planted 2,000 trees. That's fantastic. Nottingham City's carbon footprint would require the planting of 7 Kielder forests per year. That's the scale that we're looking at. That's the level that we have to achieve, the difference that we have to make. Councillors, you know the arguments. I urge you to back this motion. It's high time we got on with this. Thank you.
Councillor Major.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm delighted that everyone is so enthusiastic about this, and thank you so much for bringing this motion. It's been something I've been thinking about trying to articulate for some time myself, but you've beat me to it, and brilliant job. Thank you very much for that. I think what I like about this is the urgency. I think we are all aware that we haven't got time to sit and think and dither about these things. We need to make the difference now, so I really appreciate the immediacy within this motion. And I think, as Councillor Amanda alludes, there is still an awful long way to go. There is lots of work happening in these big companies, but there's still a minute percentage of their capital expenditure is on renewable sources of energy. And until there is an incentive, a financial incentive, for them to really invest the time and the energy in finding alternative solutions, they're not going to do it. So I think if we as a council can make our voice heard and actually put our money where our mouth is and start a bit of a snowball effect with other similar councils, then I think we can actually have that impact. So I will certainly be supporting this motion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howard wishes to speak?
Thomas.
Right.
Thomas. Councillor Thomas.
Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We support the motion to reduce our use of fossil fuels and our investment in them, and we will vote for the motion. We do have an additional request that the carbon reduction work programme should include a change to the standard format of committee reports to include an extra section to assess the impact of the report, the matter under consideration on climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cumberland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too am very pleased to have had this motion brought forward. It's a topic which is very close to my heart. I have children and grandchildren whose futures I worry for as well. And I understand everything Councillor Walker said. But what I would like to say is this is a very proactive council. As Councillor Walker should be aware, we already have this matter on our agenda for scrutiny. We are already trying to grasp this matter and do something about it. So I'm very pleased with the motion and definitely will be supporting it.
Thank you. Anyone else? So I go now to Councillor Gorn.
He's already spoken.
Right.
So it's Councillor
Right. Sorry.
That's my married name. Yeah. Thank you.
Contentious.
It's just such a thrill to hear you all talk about it, and it's really wonderful. And I take your point, Councillor Robertson, about the what the Labour government has done in the past, and I would like to kind of suggest that when it comes to the climate emergency, we all have some blood on our hands. Every single one of us, there's not any of us that are going to get away with what we've put through. So we all have to take account, and we all have to kind of atone for what we've done in the past. What was I going to say? I welcome what you said about house building. That was fab to hear. A nice addition to the conversation. And yeah, I think we need to be massively imaginative and visionary in this borough, which I think we have been and will continue to do. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And now put it to the vote. Would you show your approval by putting up your hands in the usual way, please? I think that's everyone. Thank you for that. I must say that was an extremely interesting and well-prepared debate. Thank everyone. Right. Now, item 13, questions under standing order number 11. Councillor Gowland, would you put the question to Councillor Upton, please?
Is the council aware of the changes to the timetable and fares on the L22 and L23 buses that link Abbey Wood, Lady Bay, Ruddington with West Bridgford Town Centre, in particular loss of the Saturday service since the start of the month?
Yes, the council is aware of the changes to the bus services you mentioned, but the County Council is the lead transport authority and it provides subsidies to many bus services across Nottinghamshire. For our part, we consult with the County Council as the Transport Authority on planning applications, and often a subsidy for bus services is a planning requirement, especially for large developments, but this is usually time limited for a few years. Indeed, this was the case for the bus subsidy in respect of the new health centre on Wilford Lane, which has now expired. But we have and are prepared to continue to discuss this issue with the County Council. This council is not minded to start to subsidise bus services, as we believe this is the responsibility of the County Council, as I say, as the Transport Authority. However, the Rushcliffe CVS does provide a voluntary transport scheme for people who have difficulty accessing transport.
Right, Councillor Gowland.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. I do understand this is normally the responsibility of Nottingham County Council. I just want to point out that people living in the two old people's complexes in that area literally have no contact now. There are no shops in the area. They're completely cut off from Friday to Monday. There's nowhere to get milk, nowhere to get baked beans, literally, for those people if they can't drive, and a lot of them can't. I understand about it being a county council issue, but I note that Abbey Depot is going to bring a lot of money into Rushcliffe shortly. It's right in that area, and I just wonder if some of that money could be put back into the area. Thank you.
So,
that's Councillor Upton. Yeah.
Councillor Upton?
Understand what you say, but as I don't want to repeat it too much. It is a county council issue, and it's not unique, believe me, across the borough, the issues you raise, and it is not for the borough council to get involved in financial subsidies for bus service across the borough.
Okay, I can take this one. Right, question B. Councillor Mallender.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Nice to Councillor Edderby. Given the Council's view that there's a climate emergency, will the responsible Cabinet member explore investigating inland and a solar panel farm as other local authorities such as West Sussex County Council have done?
Councillor Everdeen.
Madam Mayor, the Council is already looking at measures to reduce our carbon footprint, and indeed we've debated it tonight, and develop a carbon reduction action plan through the community subgroup and officer working group. If we were to consider such an investment, it would be subject to a business case and our usual scrutiny of suitability, and it would have to be assessed in relation to our medium-term financial strategy and the implications on both revenue and capital.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mallender, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, yes. Following that, will the Council agree to discuss with developers the inclusion of photovoltaic panels on all new build properties on major housing sites across the borough?
Right. Councillor Everdeen.
All I can say on that is that we've already mentioned that those are our ambitions to get there, but current planning doesn't allow us to dictate it yet. We hope to be able to be in that position in the future.
Business for this evening, and can I thank you all for attending. I don't know about you, but I found it absolutely fascinating. And the way everyone has conducted themselves this evening is a fine example which our government could take notice of. So can I wish you all a very safe journey home and look forward to meeting you at our next meeting. Thank you very much.